Well, there you are. Hey, Team Healthy. It's Wednesday, isn't it? Which means here we go. We got some good questions we're going to go to. By the way, those of you who are new to our live feed on every Wednesday, just know that I'm going to I take questions through the week. And then this is the day that I get together with all of you and go through the questions that have come through. If you want, if you're on the live chat, go ahead and put it over here on the chat section. And if most of you are going to be watching it on tape delay, and you know what I'm getting at, folks. And if so, then just go ahead and put it in the comment section below, and I'll get to it. I read all the comments, and I stay on top of it. Just as an aside, I tell my wife, keeping up with the comment sections is kind of like having a dairy cow. You just have to stay on top of it every day, and I do. Morning, and then during the middle of the day, and then evening, and then if I'm out, then I'll try to get it done. But anyway, put your questions in there. I can ramble on that. Okay, today, you know that I like to pick a theme based on the questions that come in. And today I'm talking about when you simply cannot get through to a narcissist. And it's interesting that in the questions, there's an undertow of anger that many of you can have. Anger in the form of frustration and irritability, and like, what is going on with these people? And we're going to be talking about some boundaries issues and things like that. Let's start with a healthy recognition today, and that is we're all interconnected. No, the old John Donne verse, "No man is an island unto himself." Each one of us has a need for the other, and in healthy relationships, we listen to each other. We tune in and we recognize that what you bring to the equation may not be what I would, but then that just means I get to be expansive because I'm in your presence, and we appreciate differences. And even when we don't agree with one another, in that sense of interconnectedness, we say, but even as you disagree, I know there are times when I don't make sense. Maybe you're not making sense to me right now. Let's still talk. Okay. That's just a very basic premise that I start with. And when you put it like that, it's not that complicated until you encounter the narcissist. They have such a high need to be in control. They're so self enamored and entitled that they just can't engage with you in a healthy interconnection. In fact, the starting point that narcissists will have is, well, why would I want to connect with you? The only connection we need to have is to me to get you to conform to me. And that's how they think. And this kind of mindset that they bring shows up especially in moments of difference and conflict. I make the assumption that it's incredibly easy to feel connected to you when you and I agree on everything. Sometimes narcissists can't do that. But the mark of maturity is when we can have a healthy engagement, even in the moments when we're not on the same page. But then when that happens with the narcissist, like, okay, here comes all their pathology. And rather than me hearing you and you hearing me and me affirming your uniqueness and you doing the same with me, it's like you're running into a brick wall. That's what I mean when I say, why can't you get through to a narcissist? That's where we're coming from today. Now, I want to just dive right in and go with our first question. And as I do so, I want you to think, have there ever been moments when have had some anger that you need to process out loud with that other person? Does that ever happen to you? Raise your hand if that's a need that you have. And of course, in any kind of relationship, there's going to be moments where you have that annoyance or frustration. And rather than thinking, well, I need to do everybody a favor and just say absolutely nothing, no, sometimes you need to talk it through. Okay, that's where we're going with this first question. This person says, I understand that getting angry is okay when it's with but when it's with a narcissist, I feel I can never talk with them. Is it normal to feel that way? Well, first, I'm glad that this person starts with the assumption that says getting angry is okay. Let's just make it even more basic than that. Getting angry is just human. And when we talk about feeling angry, there are so many subcategories to that. Sometimes people say, well, Dr. C, I don't get angry, I just get frustrated. Well, frustration is a form of anger. It's just a little bit more muffled, or annoyed, or irritable, or impatient, or agitated, or just ticked off, whatever kind of terminology you want to have. Whenever you have that kind of emotion, that's your emotional system's signal to you that says something's not right here, or I'm confused, or I'm perplexed, or I feel offended. I'd like to talk. And so, in healthy relationships, what we'll do is we'll say, "Hey, there's something I need to talk with you about." And then the other person will say, "Well, sure, I want to hear that." Narcissists can't do that. This person says, "I feel like I can never talk with him." And then uh, it's really interesting that she follows it up and says, "Is it normal to feel that way?" Now, the implication when she says, I'd like to discuss my anger, but I feel like I can't talk with them. Is it normal for me to feel this way? Okay, what's the number one word that comes to your mind when you hear that phrase? Is it okay for me to feel that way? And the word is gaslighting. One of the things that narcissists want to do is they want to keep you in a state of personal confusion. So you're annoyed, you're agitated, and you've had many attempts to talk with that narcissistic person about that emotion. And what does that person do? It's more or less, what's wrong with you, or there you go again, or you're one of the most stubborn people, you're one of the most controlling people. They'll have all sorts of accusations they're going to sling at you. And for you to say, "I'm feeling frustrated," or "I'm feeling hurt," or "I'm feeling annoyed," to the narcissist, what they're going to do is they're going to turn it into a referendum about your poor character. Now, obviously, that's a deflection technique, rather than saying, "Well, I know me well enough to know that I am capable of saying or doing something that might be off base." Or even less than that, they can say, "Well, I know me well enough to know that sometimes I don't pick up on all of the nuances. So help me understand where you're coming from." That would take a certain amount of maturity and objectivity, and that narcissist in front of you may be 49 years old, but they're coming back at you with the attitude of a 6-year old. I recently read an article, and it was a really good one, about how when people have been exposed themselves in their earlier formative years to abuse or harsh anger, uh, that the patterns can be so established, and this is not something that's brand new to me, but it was just well stated. The patterns can be so well established that it's not going to turn out well. That those little children who are exposed to harsh anger can develop a very, very tight defense structure, to the extent that they carry that with them into many other relationships. And by the time they're in their adult years, it can be so deeply entrenched that you show up and you say that, "Hey, let's talk." And their defensiveness is so deeply established that they're still responding to you as they may have when they were 6 years old, or in another relationship or something. And they're ascribing to you assumptions that don't really necessarily belong to you. And so when you say, "I don't feel like I can talk with him. Is it normal for me to feel that way?" Remind yourself, this is not about you. When you talk with a narcissist about something that is of importance to you, and you just feel like you just ran into a brick wall, the narcissist wants you to think, "See, that's your problem," when in fact it's like, "No, it's the brick wall." That's the problem. They can't say that. But I'm hoping that you can go away with the understanding that says, my emotions or my need for some sort of clarity, it's reasonable. I'm a reasonable person, and especially if you can do so in such a way where you maintain your DRC, dignity, respect, and civility, then you don't have to apologize, despite the fact that the narcissist more or less will say, "You are the problem. You need to apologize to me for what you feel." When in fact, no, I'm just having a hard time getting through, and I'm having a hard time talking with someone who sees little to no need to receive input. Let's keep in mind, there are two huge aspects to narcissism that are in play here. One is they have to be in control. And so when you come along and say, hey, there's something that we might need to rethink, they interpret that as, oh, you're trying to control me, or they interpret it as, oh, if I talk about that, then I'll lose my control position. And then a second thing that's in play here is a very, very low level of empathy, rather than thinking, well, regardless of whether this is a matter of correct versus incorrect, this is you. And I want to know you from your perspective. Narcissists can't think that way because they're so tied up in their own self-absorption and entitlement and protective need that they can't do that. But to answer your question, is it normal to feel frustrated because you can't get through? Yes, it's normal, but do not take that upon yourself as being some sort of a referendum about who you are. You're dealing with somebody who has not matured past pre-adolescent thinking. Okay. Now, this next one, and I like it when we get questions regarding the empath, because so many times that empath tends to be one of the nicest people that you've ever met, and then they're also one of the ones that can be a magnet for narcissistic condemnation. So this is where we're coming from. This next person says, "How can an empath live with a narcissist?" And I know many of you say, "Well, not well." And then this person goes on to say, is it possible to be oneself with boundaries and assertiveness, knowing they have a yo-yo mood, but doing what is meaningful and joyful for myself? So this person is saying, yeah, I try to establish my boundaries. Is it possible for me to live with that individual, knowing that whenever I do establish my boundaries, that other person is going to, I like the yo-yo, up and down, back and forth. I don't know what they're going to do. Can I have any kind of meaningful joy, knowing that that's going to be the case? Let's go back and remember what we're talking about when we use the term boundaries. Boundaries begins with you having a definition for yourself, what you believe is wisest and best, how you want to manage preferences and priorities, what your opinions are, how you want to proceed with various kinds of tasks or whatever. And so, as you have a good definition and say, "Yeah, this is what it means to be me," then you're at the beginning point of having boundaries. And then the second half of boundaries is you live it out. So let me give you a really simple illustration. This was a number of years ago. Um, Understand, I'm not a heavy drinker. That's just not something that I do all the time. Occasionally, here and there, I'll have a little something. So, because I'm not just a stick in the mud with that, but nonetheless, my wife and I were going to a Mexican restaurant, and we were going to meet another couple there. It was a Friday night, and on the way there, I mentioned to my wife, and she said something like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy a margarita." And I just said something like, I don't think I'm going to have anything to drink tonight. And so it's like, okay. And we got to the restaurant and we sat down, and the other couple was already there. And the husband had ordered two beers, one for him and one for me. And I just tried to make light of it. I actually had a little bit of a headache that night. I just didn't want anything there. So I tried to make light of it. And I said, well, I have good news for you. The good news is you get to have two beers, because I've already decided I'm not going to have anything to drink tonight. But thank you for the thought. Well, he wouldn't let it go. And it's like, well, come on, you need to have something. I said, well, no, I've just kind of decided in advance that I'd rather not. And this guy actually was kind of a party animal anyway. And I don't know, I just didn't want to go into that space. Well, he wouldn't let it go. And he just kept pressing. Well, come on, what's wrong with you? You going to be a drip? Are you going to be a stick in the mud? And at that point, it's like, I dug in my heels. It's like, I am not going to say, okay, okay, I'll do what you want, because then it became a matter of principle. And so I just said, well, I hope you can appreciate that. That's just kind of where I am tonight. And I mean, he was offended, which I find to be terribly interesting. Let's just call it that. Can you be an empath? In other words, I like to know where other people are coming from as I engage with them, and I want to factor in where they are. I'd like for you to do the same with me. But then, can you be an empath, knowing that they're not going to receive that? They're going to be in a yo-yo mood. It's like, well, if I establish my boundary, you're not going to like it. How can I have my own sense of meaning knowing that I'm going to be with that? And the answer is, well, go ahead and be what you are. Go ahead and establish your boundaries. Go ahead and establish your parameters. And hopefully, I've had plenty of other folks. If I were to say the same thing that I did with that guy, other folks would say, "Okay, I'll just I'll have yours." First of all, they wouldn't have made that presumption in the first place. But if you're going to be the kind of person that goes up and down and high and low based on whether I meet your criteria or not, then you're probably not going to be on my inner circle. So, can you be an empath with a narcissist? Yeah, go ahead and be that, but then know that it's not likely to be highly reciprocated and factor that in. And then I'm hoping that you can find people that know you and engage with you, whether it's in a social setting or a family setting or a work setting, that you do have some people that will say, well, I'd like to know you. I appreciate your desire to connect with people. I'd like to do the same in reverse. But just know that that narcissistic individual is not going to be at the top of your list on that group of acquaintances. Okay. Keep your boundaries and hold on to them and don't apologize. Now, speaking of boundaries, let's take it to another level. And this is another thing that I get quite a few questions on. So I want to go ahead and I know I've answered this in different ways, but let's go into this one. This other person says, I have an angry reaction when someone crosses my boundaries, even when I clearly and repeatedly voice them, and they're overstepping them and trying to have it their way. And then here's the kicker. That person says, maybe I'm the narcissist. And then they put in parentheses, I'm ashamed of that reaction. Okay, which is exactly what the narcissist is wanting. So let's suppose that you have a procedure. It's a let's say it's a family matter, and you want to handle it this way, and that narcissistic person wants to do it something different. It's a work setting, and you want to approach it with this angle in mind, or whatever it might be. And so, and you've been very clear and you're consistent and it makes good sense, and that narcissist continues to press you to do it that person's way. And again, I know that when you're with a narcissist, particularly on a very personal level, that's just going to be an ongoing kind of an issue that you have to come to terms with. And then you can think, well, does this mean the fact that I feel like I've gone into stubborn mode, the fact that I feel like, or I know that I'm going to be interpreted as being uncooperative, am I the narcissist? And that's exactly what the narcissist wants you to think. Narcissists, when they hear that term, narcissism, they think of it as a nasty word. And when I use the word narcissism or narcissist, what I'm thinking is it's kind of a shorthand way of saying there are many elements that go along with that pattern of life. And it's just kind of a shortcut way of saying this is a person that has high control and low empathy and need for superiority and manipulation and so on and so forth. So you want to just have an honest assessment of yourself. Okay, so I'm trying to establish boundaries and then the other person doesn't like it. What do I think about me in this moment? Am I being selfish? And if the answer is yeah, I'm a pretty selfish person, then drop it. Quit doing that. But if the answer is I'm just trying to use common sense, or I'm trying to follow through on what makes sense to me, or I have a headache and I don't want to have anything alcoholic to drink, or whatever it might be, hold firm and just know I'm coming from a decent place. And then when you have that sense of shame that's probably been trained in you, I'm hoping you can think uh, the narcissist is the one who's actually the shame based person. Somewhere in their past, they learned being different means you're awful. Being different means you're a troublemaker. And so they're projecting that onto you when in fact you may say to yourself, well, yeah, I am different in the sense that we're not on the same page in this very moment, but that's not something that I need to be shamed for. And so when this person says, well, maybe I'm the narcissist and I feel ashamed, then what you're doing is you're receiving a very improper, non objective presumption from the narcissist toward you, and it's not yours to have to carry. Simply be you and let it be. Okay. Um, and by the way, one other thought, and that is when you establish your boundaries with that narcissist, you don't have to have their approval to follow through on your boundaries. Let's say you have a situation at home with a family member and you say, I'm going to handle it this way. And the narcissist says, yeah, I expected that. You're just a selfish person. And you're thinking, well, actually, that was a pretty good decision I made. Rather than thinking, well, I guess I need to rearrange everything I'm doing then to please that narcissist. No, you're not having any success in getting through to them. They're trying to get into your head. And it's like, no, I don't, just because I can't get through to them and I can't make them understand doesn't mean that I have to just drop everything that I believe in, my boundaries, and conform to them, their dysfunction. I'm just going to go ahead and say, well, nonetheless, that's the decision I've made. And then when they say, well, I think it's a stupid decision, in my mind, I'm thinking, I realize that. And I know you think I'm stupid. I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And you just be you. And you don't have to convince them. You don't have to plead your case. And that's where a lot of you get in trouble when you go into the persuasion mode. Come on, don't you understand? Then you start justifying. Then you start rationalizing. No. Explain yourself once, and then if that person just can't go along with it, you're finished as far as the conversation goes, and then just proceed based on your own common sense. And we go back. When I say in healthy relationships, you want to have a sense of interconnectedness. In moments like this, the narcissist will more or less imply, I'm not interested in interconnection. I'm interested in dominance. I'm interested in you conforming to me. And it's like, well, that being the case, then we're not going to have a deep relationship because those are ingredients that don't really match up with who I am and who I want to be. And so you resign yourself to the fact this is not going to be a relationship that's going to have extremely close emotional ties. That's sad, isn't it? Okay, now here's one, and I've actually had several, actually quite a few people comment on something to this nature. This person says, how about when the narcissist has seen these narcissistic videos and goes no contact because they think you are the narcissist? Oh, and I'm thinking, oh, that is so common. Do narcissists troll people like me and Dr. Romney and some of the others? And the answer, oh yeah, they do. Not enough, or if they do, they're certainly not learning much. And so this person goes on to say, well, yeah, I've been watching these videos and it's got your name written all over it. Um, Understand that when a narcissist does that, that is absolutely classic projection. They're seeing in you what they don't want to come to terms with inside themselves. For example, let's suppose a narcissist goes into high bossy mode and they say, we need to take care of this. We need to do it right now. And it needs to be done in this way. And then if you come back and say, well, I have some other priorities that I need to tend to first, then what they'll do is they'll come back and say, you're so controlling. You're so overbearing. You're a narcissist. And it's like, no, actually, this whole conversation got started when you started telling me what to do, the control and the lack of empathy and all of that. Those are narcissistic characteristics, sir or ma'am. And then when I say, well, I'd rather take care of my own stuff first, and then I'd be glad to see if we can coordinate. Then if they come back and say, well, you've proven just how impossible you are, what they're really saying is, I'm a little kid that whines and throws a temper tantrum when I don't get my way, but you're a narcissist. And you when you break it down like this with these kind of questions and scenarios, I'm sure hoping that you can walk away realizing, man, these people truly can't be adult. They have such difficulty having the objectivity of saying, well, I do have my preferences, but I know you have yours. And that's not a sign of one person being a narcissist and the other not. It just is a sign of the fact that we're different. Let's make plenty of room for variety and uniqueness and distinctives inside a relationship. And the narcissist will hear that. It's like, all right, I already do that. In fact, I'm really good at that. And they deny it, and then they blame you. Don't bite, and just understand who you're dealing with. And I wish that I could say that there's a magical formula that you could use to get inside their head and make them see the light. And that's part of the problem that you can have when you run into this difficulty over and over. You're thinking, how can I get them to understand that I'm reasonable? And so you say something, and then brick wall. And then it's like, well, maybe if I try to give this background information, and then you say something there, brick wall. You can't get through to them. And then finally, it's like, well, maybe I'm the problem. And the answer is no, you're not the problem. The problem is these individuals don't have that interconnectedness. It's all about me. They make no room for you. Understand that's what you're dealing with. And then when they flip it around and say, no, you're the problem, it's like, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, and I'll certainly try to be objective about it. And if I find that there is something within me that needs to be adjusted, then I'll be glad to go there. That's a non-narcissistic thing, even as they accuse you of being narcissistic. Oh, it's exhausting when you realize I got to stay on my toes with these people because they're just going to keep hammering away at me until I finally acquiesce and say, okay, okay, you win, which is what they want. I'm not even trying to win. Um, okay, another person asked, and this is a parental question. By the way, I don't know if you know, we've kind of been cleaning up some of my website stuff, and on my Dr. Les Carter channel, we got coffee mugs. I think we have a couple of T-shirts. If y'all want one, go there. Or I think we even have them now on the Surviving Narcissism.tv. Get your DRC coffee mugs. Um, this person asked, can a mother of a narcissist, the mom is not a narcissist herself, this in parentheses, can a mother of a narcissist be fooled by a narcissistic child? Or is that where, or is that where there's a narcissist there as an enabling mother? Um, so, and it doesn't say how old the child is, 7 years old, 18, 47. I don't really know. One of the greatest difficulties that a parent can have is to come to terms with the fact that their offspring can be ridiculously difficult. Now, if that person is under the age of 25, then I'm going to be very hesitant to refer to them as a strong narcissist. 25 is roughly when we know that the brain development is pretty well taken care of. Prior to that, you're still in development. There's still a lot of who am I kind of things that you're dealing with. And sometimes, particularly in late teens and early 20s, healthy individuals can look upon some of their childishness and think, I can do better. And so they grow. And so if we're talking about this mother who has a narcissistic child, but that's a 17-year-old kid, I'm thinking, well, you still need to have your parameters and your boundaries and your discussions about the cleaner alternatives and who are you and all. But let's give it a little bit of time to see if they can grow out of it, because sometimes they do. I can promise you, when I was 17 or 18, I was far more selfish than I was, let's say, at 61, which is a few years ago. And so hopefully some maturity will catch up. But can a mother be fooled by a narcissistic child? And let's say that child is now 38. No mother wants to say, oh, yeah, I have a child who's just way off the rails. But sometimes it can happen. And then uh, uh, this person didn't ask, but many times a parent can say something like, well, where did I go wrong? Did I give them the wrong ingredients, or did I bring them up inappropriately, or was it my the other parent that did it? And you can do the coulda, woulda, shoulda game with yourself for forever. And I think that you want to be honest. If you can think, looking back, maybe I did miss some things or mismanage things in ways that allowed that child to go deeper into their control and insensitivity. And if that's the case, then acknowledge it and speak to the child about it. Let's say it is a 37-year-old and say, as I examine myself now, I can look back and see that there are things that I would have done differently. Know that I'm continuing to examine myself, and I'd like for you to join me in that. That's called leadership, by the way. Uh, if you have a narcissistic child, does that mean that you're just totally at fault as a parent? It's like, not necessarily. And then also, let's keep in mind that narcissism often is more hardwired genetically into some individuals than others. Some people are just naturally inclined towards softness and empathy. Others are naturally inclined not toward that. And so, doesn't matter. In some cases, even if you have some of the finest parents around, sometimes you can just have a kid that's just hardwired in a different kind of direction. So you want to be careful that you don't just do the kick me game uh, deep into your adult years. If you have an adult child that's struggling with the narcissistic pattern, what you want to do is you want to try to be as descriptive as possible rather than as judgmental about that, and say, here's what does work, here's what does not work, here's what I'd like to examine, and here's how adjustments we can make, and go into that kind of space. And then if the child can follow you in that direction, that would be wonderful. And if not, and they continue to be overbearing and controlling, unfortunately, there are times when you may have to minimize some of your interaction with your own adult child. And that's probably, I'm trying to think if there's any kind of relationship where it works. It's probably one of the most difficult decisions to have to make if you do have a child who's now an adult and is just deeply into selfishness and insensitivities, to say, I'm going to pull way back, because no parent ever has to want to go into that kind of space. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes there are some influences that parent cannot have avoided. It may be the other parent has made it more difficult. It may be that they've had some influences that you didn't have any say so over. So be very careful that you're not being overly judgmental. There are a lot of people who are in that boat, but they don't like to talk about it because they don't want to feel shamed. And so, if you have that experience, then just know that it's something that you don't want to just kick yourself over so much that you wind up just carrying all sorts of emotional garbage that you just can't come to terms with. Okay, that's a tough one. Um, how about this next question? Are these people aware that they're using tactics, or is it done without them realizing it? Hey, by the way, check with me. Are we? Okay? Yeah, there it comes. I was just having a hard time seeing the chat there. Y'all are still there. I was kind of wondering, did something go wrong there? Are these people aware that they're using tactics, or is it done without realizing it? When we're talking today about how these individuals are so difficult to break through with, you just can't get through with them. And you can see that there are certain predictable patterns that they're in. And the question is, are they aware that they're actually using deflective or damaging or condescending kinds of tactics? And the answer is probably about 98%. And I'm being liberal, probably closer to 100. The answer is no, they're not aware that they're using tactics. What they do is they'll say, it's not me, it's you. And so it's not like they're coming up with a strategy. They don't get up on first thing in the morning and sit on the side of the bed and say, well, tell you what, today, if something goes wrong between me and someone else, I'm going to use the tactic of, let's see, today I think I'm going to shame them. Or I'm going to use the tactic of, well, today I think I'm going to do stonewalling. Or I'm going to, they don't do that. Instead, it's just so deeply entrenched in them. The habits, the patterns have been building for years and years, that it just is part of their just natural reaction. And actually, this goes into what we then eventually refer to as their subconscious mind. It's there, but they're not really thinking about it. It's just a raw reaction based on historical experiences, and they've never taken the time to go back and ask, why do I respond this way, or what's going on in this moment they just go into the suppression, repression, and then blame shifting and all the rest. And so I'm not even going to give them enough credit to say they're using tactics. Now, I will say this: it's not as though narcissists can't do that, because I've actually known. I am thinking about a guy that I knew. He was constantly being devious in the ways that he would engage with people, and he just point blank said, what I do is if I know I'm going to get called out on something, I'll tell a lie. I don't care, because they don't need to know about me. And I'm thinking, really? And so in his case, it was a conscious decision. Yeah, lying is a tactic. I can do it. So sometimes they do use tactics, knowing full well it's inappropriate, but it's like too bad, because the means justifies the end, or the end justifies the mean, I should say. And so sometimes they do, and then many times it's just a subconscious kind of reaction. Okay. Okay. How about this next one? This person says, gaslighting is interesting to me because I don't understand how gaslighters believe they can change another individual and objective experiences. One's history is what had already happened. So this person is more or less saying, well, I'm wanting to talk about personal experiences, things that happened between me and you in the past. And the narcissist is just gaslighting, and they're thinking, look, I'm just trying to talk about facts. It happened. We had a bad situation, or this didn't work out well. And so the narcissist, in their gaslighting, keeping in mind, gaslighting means that they're trying to perpetuate confusion in you about who you are and what you perceive, and how you have arrived at your conclusions. They don't want you to feel comfortable about the way that you look at life. So this person just simply says they don't have the magical power to erase or twist someone else's objective experiences that have already happened. But in gaslighting, they want you to think that what you believe or what you remember is not accurate. And so let's keep in mind that part of the reason narcissists are difficult to get through with is in their gaslighting. They've already, if you can say, gaslit themselves. In other words, they've lied to themselves and repositioned their understanding of truth. And then they take that same thinking and apply it to you. And so what they're doing with you is part of their own unfinished business. And in doing so, that makes them that much more difficult for you to break through, because how can they appreciate who you are if they can't even be honest about who they are? And so when you realize a person is coming at you with, you don't know what you're talking about, or you were way inappropriate, and you're thinking, well, as objective as I can be, I don't think that's the case. They're messing with you because they've never really come to terms with what's going on inside themselves. And that's part of why they're so difficult to break through with. If for me to say I have a problem, or I didn't manage this well, or this didn't work out the way that you wanted, therefore I need to make some adjustments, then there's a certain amount of humility and empathy that's required. And part of narcissism is the lack of all of that. Okay. Um, okay. This next question, I think I'm going to end with this one. This person says, why is it that every time I start to break away from a narcissist's negative behavior, I suddenly feel afraid and I don't follow through? Now, one of the things that I have said repeatedly is that a goal of a narcissist is to empty you of you, and in place they want to fill you with themselves. And so when they finally keep whittling away at you, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a difficult person. I don't know why I put up with you. Where did you come up with an idea like that? Over time, and when I say over time, you can have a dozen experiences like that, 100, sometimes literally several thousand experiences with certain individuals who just whittle away at you. Over time, you can start thinking, I'm tired of this. I need to go ahead and be me. And so you want to have your freedom. You want to have your privilege to choose for yourself. But the narcissist whittling away at you can be so persistent that when you finally do get to that place of saying, I'm going to reclaim me, it can feel weird. It can feel strange. I've had so many people that would come to my counseling office and they'll describe a scenario where they're trying to, manage it cleanly, and what they describe makes total sense. And it's like, oh, that was a real good way to break that down. Way to go. And then they can look at me like, I don't know if I need to do that, or it's going to create too much trouble. And so they back down, which is exactly what narcissists want. They want to be in the dominant position, and that means that someone has to be in the subordinate position, and that's you. And part of your subordination is you lose your own comfort and confidence in your thinking style, and you hand over the controls to the narcissist. They absolutely eat it up when you acquiesce to that. And so, one of the things that you might have to go through, knowing that the narcissist is not someone you're going to break through with, is when you say, "This is me. This is who I am, and this is what I do in my courses." When the "This is me" course is what I had in mind. When they come along and say, "Well, that's not good enough," in your mind, it may feel awkward, but you can say, to you, I'm not good enough. To me, I am. And so I'm hoping that you can pull back and have an assessment of who you are as objectively as you can. And sometimes it's done with a therapist, where you can say, I just need to know, what are my intentions, what are my motives, what are my methods, and you constantly want to upgrade so that you can be in the best version of yourself as you can, knowing full well the narcissist is not in that same growth mode with you. They want you to regress so that they can maintain dominance. That's their game. Uh, Going back, do they know they're doing that tactic? Well, yes and no. But I'm hoping that you can decide, I'm just not very good being somebody that ultimately I'm not. And so rather than thinking just for short term peace, I'll go along to get along, I'm hoping you can see that if you do that too much, then the net result is you have no you to draw upon anymore, because you quit listening. And so listen to yourself. Tune into the red flags that they're giving. Know that you have your own distinct personality for a reason, and that is, each one of us gets to be our own separate person. And when the narcissist says, I don't agree with that, and you know that you can't make them think any differently, let them think that, because they will anyway, and then you proceed anyhow on your own. Now, this is difficult because, like I say, as we're talking about this, we're talking about trends and patterns, and it's not necessarily the quickest and easiest thing to get rid of that, or as opposed to just one little episode here or one little episode there. But at the same time, growth and maturation and maturity is not changing episodes, but it's changing the way you think and the way that you react, and then how you eventually view yourself relative to the people in front of you. Okay, Team Healthy, I'm leaving some here on the table. Keep putting your questions out there, and just let me know what's on your mind. I love this format because it allows me to know you more fully, and it allows us to talk about this in a little bit more casual kind of way. And I so appreciate all the comments that you make. And just know that I do not take it lightly when you allow me to be on your journey with you. This I was talking to a friend about this recently. This is a blessing for me. I really like being able to do this, because it forces me to stay sharp in my own personal life, and then it allows me to have a sense of gratification in knowing that if I say something that matters and help somebody in a positive way, then it's like, okay, this has been a good day. So let's do that with each other, and let's keep growing, and just know that's what we do here on Team Healthy. Okay. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and stay strong. Keep thinking. Keep examining yourself, and I'm hoping you can be a person of peace in the process. That's the goal that we have. All right, guys. I shall see you next week. Just know that I really enjoy you being here with me on Team Healthy. Bye.